All right. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Ghosts of Hawaii. You know who. Tonight we have a very, to me, emotional and also very profound show this evening. And due to the nature of the program as well, I'm going to say from the very beginning this particular live stream is not intended for younger audiences. But anyone else that is interested in history and a connection with the paranormal, please by all means, let's just sit around this nice little lonely lantern that I have and let's have a discussion about the plague and also the hauntings that generated afterwards because of that fact. There's a few personal experiences that I can relate to in regard to that. And also, I'm sure my guests as well that is going to be on in just a moment. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how illness can absolutely devastate an entire culture, an entire group of people like the Native Hawaiians. And in today's world, we're seeing all these other things start to unfold. And as you folks come in, if I say aloha, then I'm just going to say aloha now to all of you. We can see the things that unfold that has to do with the possibility, the very real concern with COVID-19 on how it's overwhelming us to some degree, and the division that has been caused because of that as well. Aloha to all of you that are coming in here tonight. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about how big of an issue this is currently today, and how we definitely need to look back and see how big it was back then as well. We should never forget what has happened before. So tonight, joining me is my special guest for this evening. He is the founder of Hawaiian Hauntings, a fantastic group that you can find on Facebook. He's also a great storyteller, and he is also very knowledgeable with the Hawaiian culture itself. So Joe Punohu is my guest tonight, and I'm very happy to have him on. He's been on several times, and I'm sure this isn't the last because he is always bringing something fascinating to our conversations. And we will talk about Hawaiian hauntings a little bit later on towards the end of the program. So, first and foremost, aloha to all of you out there. Thank you for being here tonight. And as I said, right now, we are going through our own type of plague. We're going through our own type of pandemic. And it's a very idea how to control these type of circumstances. But anyway, folks, let's bring in to the conversation as my special guest tonight, Joe Punohu. Joe Punohu, thank you so much for being here. Um, if it's not as loud, let us know, folks. Okay, if it's not, if you have a hard time hearing, go ahead, Joe.
Hey, how's it?
Yeah,
Good to
good to
be here.
have you.
Thanks for having me on, dude.
What was that?
Thanks for having me on, dude.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, excuse me. I got this darn fan on behind me, and that's the only way I can keep cool. I turned off the air conditioner and such. But Joe, so let's talk about the Hawaiian culture itself. At some point in the past, I mean, there was this beautiful, wonderful way of life that was mostly free of disease and such. And of course, later on, all of that changed when there was an introduction to the rest of the world that came to the Hawaiian Islands and such. What can you illustrate for us what those days might have been like before everything happened?
Well, I'm sure people did get sick, occasionally, but
Hmm.
not to the extent that they did post contact. Um, I mean, you see pictures, you see recreations, you see traditional wear. The Hawaiians didn't wear much clothes. They wore the malo, they wore tapa, which is like a tree bark, and that was more than enough to keep them healthy and safe. They had a lot of it was probably because of their diet too. You got corn and fish, and all of the fresh fruits and vegetables and all that stuff that they can have as well. Um, I wanted to point out something a little interesting. I remember reading, I forget the exact numbers, but Captain Cook gave the Hawaii. They estimated the population of Hawaii. They estimated it at a few 100,000, I think it was. But the article I read a while back said that the estimation was very, really wrong because Captain Cook just estimated based on what he saw on the coast. What he saw on the coast. He
Right.
didn't take into account up in the valley. He didn't take into account like in the lot, on a walk, places that you can't see from the coast. Estimates of the population for Native Hawaiians back then, pre-contact, was probably well over a million. And to have a culture that, still
Hi, everybody. Hi,
operated with stone tools,
Charity.
that still operated with stone tools, and to have a culture that did that, they didn't have metal, they didn't have electricity, no automation, and to sustain a population that large is truly a remarkable feat.
Hmm. Wow. So there was a lot of people back then, and from what I understand, just correct me if I'm wrong. The Hawaiian culture itself is well over 1,000 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, with possibly with some changes. Some of the ancient sites and sacred places were dated to be built over 1,000 years ago. Man, I really need to get my. I remember when I read a lot of books, but I need to study the subject. I can tell you exactly how far back it goes.
Hmm.
That would be cool.
Wow.
But yeah, it went very far back. They were able to do so many things.
Hmm.
Like the Heiau, people estimated that it would have taken like 100 years to build Ulupo Heiau, the one in Kailua. That passing the rocks from hand to hand, some places over 40 miles, from the plains of Emma Beach and Kapolei, and the stones were assumed to have come from there. To be able to do that in your lifetime is amazing.
Hmm.
Some guys no lie, 40 people from Kailua to Kapolei passing rocks hand by hand to build that monument that's known today as Ulupo Heiau. Sorry, we're not getting off something. We're talking about.
No, no, that's fine because we need to understand where we were before, or the Hawaiian history, where we were before all this devastation actually took place. Now, I'm not sure if you have any knowledge about the way that the traditional medicine was administered to the people back then. But if you do, please share some of that. And what made the Hawaiian people so healthy and strong overall. I mean, I'm pretty sure diet would be part of it, right?
Diet was also the kahuna that did the la'aulapa'au, the medicinal healing stuff. They they knew what they were doing. They incorporated a lot of spiritualism into their work. Like the kahuna wouldn't from what I know, and can't say this is true for everybody, but the kahuna, or the people in charge of the healing of the herbs, didn't have their own garden. They didn't have a garden in their backyard where they grew their own herbs and they grew their own things. No, when somebody got sick, they would come to the kahuna. The kahuna would then go into the mountains because it's believed that up in the mountains is the better kukuina, the better roots, the better everything, the stronger, the wild ones that grew up in the mountains. And they would look and they would pick their way through, let's say, a kukuina, and they would, that one kukuina that would call to the kahuna would be the one that was medicine for that person. They incorporated a lot of spiritual, as I said before, and even even journals and stuff more towards post contact. One of the subjects not spoken of very much or in very good light, and I'm not painting it the picture, but it's human sacrifice. I found it interesting. One of the things I had read was on the slopes of Diamond Head at the Papaena Heiau. Kamehameha, one of his favorite wives, got sick, and so he decided to sacrifice to his god. So he performed. I think he was going to perform about 40 his most favored wives of her illness. But he would do it again and again and again, and it didn't work. Versus when he would have done it before, you know, the gods would have came down, taken over, and they would have said, okay, we'll accept this human sacrifice and we'll make them better. But the gods stopped responding to the Western plagues that were brought here, the illnesses, the sickness, and all of that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the whole Hawaiian system, the way of life, the kapu system, the religion, the heiaus, that's why the Hawaiians overthrew it themselves. Many people think, you know, when you think of God, you think of God as a deity, a monotheistic deity, one God. You do not question, you obey, and you love and worship, right? God cannot do wrong. Everything is in a greater plan, right? The Hawaiians had their gods, but they worshiped their gods as far as their gods gave to them. Their own kuleana gods, their own family, I want to say Amakua gods. If they didn't deliver, they would find a new one. If this god of war didn't deliver, sacrifice people to this god of war, and nothing happened, well, then they're going to get another god of war to sacrifice to. The gods were not revered in the status of all-knowing. They were like, it was a symbiotic relationship, yeah. And so when the people got sick, I mean, you know, because the Western, the whalers, the fishermen, the explorers, when they all came over here and started getting the Hawaiian people sick, it was, you know, they would pray to their gods, and their gods stopped responding to them. And so they're like, well, maybe maybe the Hawaiian gods abandoned us, you know, so we're going to abandon them too. And they burned the heiaus, and they tore apart the rocks and that kind of stuff as well.
Also, even amongst the those times that you speak of, there was sometimes there was a bit of a clash in how things should be approached, or if this thing didn't work, then we have to try something else to make sure that everything would be made pono, even with health. Health would have to be addressed also in the terms of pono and everything else. So not only was it the fact that the Hawaiians were very much so in tune with nature and looking at those elements to help them in their health and everything else, but there is also this spiritual side that went on with all of it as well. If I'm not mistaken with what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, it's what the Chinese have learned and what they still practice. For the most part, it's what we, in our Western civilization, it's what we are still learning. Again, you know, you know, the whole body, spirit, mind, and health, everything is all connected together.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff.
Okay. So now we're going to get to the part that's really sad. So as time went on, of course, it was inevitable. You know, we just cannot. Of course, the Native Hawaiians didn't know that. Like maybe at the time, I'm not sure. Maybe you can clarify something if not, but didn't expect or didn't know of something else coming into the picture. And of course, that picture was the rest of the world that discovered Hawaii and the ensuing situations that developed. I mean, there were changes in perception of religion and ways of life that were being slowly altered. But then again, there's also the element of disease that came into the picture. I did some research before doing this show, and one of the things that I was really shocked and saddened to see was around 1803, I believe it was, that there was a epidemic. They think it was the yellow fever. Of course, documentation back then, you know, is pretty difficult to, you know, bring all together in today's world. But it killed over 170,000 of the population back then, and that's a huge, significant number. You know, because it's just hitting them all at once. And just like in today's world, you know, we're just getting slammed with the virus and everything. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they said that was almost half the population at that time. So
Yeah, that was according to Captain assessments. Yeah.
yeah, so big thing that happened. And then as of course the years went on and more Hawaii is introduced to the rest of the world, there were all these other things that started to happen with other types of diseases. I was amazed at how much different types of illnesses that the Hawaiian people had to deal with. They dealt with measles, they dealt with smallpox, they dealt with whooping cough, dysentery, leprosy, syphilis, gonorrhea, and the list just, I mean, there's even more than that that's involved with everything. So if I'm not mistaken, Kamehameha II, who went to England around 1824, succumbed to measles as well, along with his wife. So, I mean, this became a very prevalent thing insofar as all of that goes. And from what I understand, it actually played a part in how the Hawaiian monarchy was dismantled. Because in this particular time frame, when it was accelerating and things were going on, the missionaries that came to Hawaii were actually blaming everything on them, their way of life, their food, and everything else. And they were not seen as being able to take care of themselves. And so later on, there was that whole transition. Of course, if you look up in history, of a change in power that was handed over to the American government and such over a period of time. Joel, do you know anything at all about that? Would you like to say anything about that? Because I know you and I have, based upon some things that we've done in the past, we have kind of like a connection to at least one location or so on this particular island. Because I know these epidemics hit all the other islands. We went all the way up to the 1900 bubonic plague that took place in Chinatown as well. Actually, just to
Oh
let
yeah.
you folks know, by 1924, there was about maybe 24,000 Native Hawaiian that were left in the Hawaiian island chain. Of course, folks, if you've looked into some other parts of history, you want to leave a comment, that's fine. I'm open to any input that you give as well. But Joe, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, the plagues were bad. I mean, you gotta remember too. We'll take a step back. Captain Cook arrived 1779, I believe it was,
Hmm.
and and that's when things started spreading. Um, Remember when he arrived, they thought he was God. They thought he was Lono, and so they gave him anything he wanted.
Hmm.
And it was interestingly enough, like the scene that was painted for me, some of the readings that I have come across was the ships would come into the bay, like let's say Kealakeakua in the Big Island, and the people, the Hawaiians, would fill the waters in their canoes, swimming out to them. And you got to remember as well, the whole idea of morality was defined differently back then. So
Okay,
you
wait,
had
wait,
these,
wait, hold on, Joe. Pause 1 second, please.
yeah,
Okay, folks, I understand that this is a sensitive issue. Okay, but even like with today's world and what's going on, let's not get anything along the lines of racial, please. Let's just be talking about the situation for what has transpired. It's fine to have such strong emotions and everything, as long as it's not harmful to other people. I understand your feelings, but in the comment section, please, folks, let's just kind of tone it down a bit. I'm just asking respectfully. Okay, Joe, go ahead, continue.
okay, so the scene that was painted for me was more or less like these Hawaiian native women throwing themselves at these white sailors because they were like intrigued at this exotic people. And so there were, as he said, this is like an adult subject, but I'm not going to get into details. But they were very promiscuous. They had no trouble expressing themselves and their bodies. And syphilis and gonorrhea were huge things that just went all over the islands. And this was 1779. This was even well before 1800 that this kind of stuff started happening, right? So this, I mean, the whole mentality you gotta understand is they weren't really used to this kind of stuff, right? Man, it's just there. It's kind of similar to COVID in the sense that there's no immunity to this, in the sense that there's no cure. There was no cure for it either. That kind of stuff. Now you're talking. Let's get back to what you're talking about. Yeah, downtown Honolulu has many, 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 many burial mounds, plague pits, mass burial graves, that kind of stuff. That's just one of the places around you. It's hard to go anywhere on the island without coming near a mass burial. I mean, we did the research as well. We talked about it often. What was it in the 1920s? The Hawaiian population had dwindled down to less than 20,000,
Something like
and
that.
that's
Yeah,
from
that's
anywhere from
it was along those lines.
350.
Yeah.
Yeah, anywhere from 350,000 to a million people, and a century later, it's dwindled down to just a small handful. That's what the diseases do. A lot of people seem to think nowadays, Hawaiians, you think of Hawaiians as unhealthy. Yeah, right. Hawaiians are overweight. Hawaiians have heart problems. Hawaiians have all of these medical issues. Yeah. And for me, growing up, I blamed it on spam, like our diet, right? But it's not. It's based on the fish blood. You're more susceptible to this kind of stuff. In fact, a lot of the Hawaiians are mixed with so many different cultures: the Chinese, Hawaiian Japanese, Hawaiian Caucasian. That's the only reason why the Hawaiian culture, the Hawaiian race, has still flourished. Because if you have Chinese, have Hawaiian, you got 50% immunity to all of these diseases that'll hit you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, of course, there are parallels, and we can get maybe into that a little bit later between what's going on in today's world and what's going on back then. But let's look at the whole paranormal side of things. So we're going to focus
Yeah.
on that part, which I know you and I have an interest in this as well. Personally, I have had a few encounters working in the field, being some of these places where these areas that were affected, that they had mass graves and everything in. So we can talk about that as well. So before I go into my part, though, I would really love to hear, and I think we may have had like one or two, or maybe a little bit more shared experiences as well. But okay, so what is your what is your take on all of this? Let's talk about how these
The
places have.
hauntings happen.
What's that?
How the hauntings come into play?
Yeah, how the hauntings come into play. Because I think
Yeah.
you can go into a lot of directions with that. But go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the history. The history is fantastic, but I mean, this is a ghost story channel.
Hmm.
Let's get down to business.
Of course.
I did haunted ghost tours for years and years. I've been doing ghost tours downtown Honolulu for more than a decade now. Taking people around, telling them the stories, showing them the plaques over at Kawai House Cemetery, where all of the people that were dug up when they had just extended Queen Street, about Kaka'ako Fire Station and the smallpox epidemic of 1853, that killed thousands and thousands of people in the case of a month or two. The hauntings, I mean, you look up Kaka'ako Fire Station alone and you will come across stories. There's a book or two, there's several books published about the hauntings at Kaka'ako Fire Station, the old one and the new one. Kaka'ako Fire Station was smallpox. I believe the hospital was next door to it, a smallpox hospital, and where they are used to be the graveyard, right? I
Hmm.
think the graveyard had a capacity of 2,000 people, but I believe the number was over 9,000 that died in that area. There were so obviously not everybody was buried. People would bury their loved ones right outside Kawai House Cemetery because they wanted to do a proper Christian burial, and there just wasn't enough room in the cemetery or time for that. These times were like, yeah, ugh. Sorry, getting back into history. Um, you go to the state capitol, they have a mass burial site for children. Um, and I believe there was smallpox as well. It's a little ahu right in the front of Veritania Street to the Waikiki side, right in the front next to the Father Damien statue, or the Saint Damien statue. And that ahu, I believe, was reinterred many children's bones, from what I've heard. I could be wrong though, but um, underneath, under the state capitol, there's a ghost story I like to tell. I haven't told it for a while, not since October, but see if I can remember. Where the storage room down over there, the security would go down. They would hear children playing, children laughing down in the basement, under the ground. And one of the people people that had worked there shared a story in the early 2000s on a blog for ghost stories of the state capitol, right? That they would go down and it looked like the building shook because every morning people would go down and some of the books would be pushed forward. So before he leaves work, he push all the books back against the wall, and then he come back down again, and the books will be pushed forward again. And it's always one book pushed forward more than all the rest. And that book was about the health laws, the regulations, and all of that stuff too in Hawaii. So it could be a sign. Um, I did want to share a story. This is relative. It includes a mass burial. Now, I've read different accounts, and I'm not going to specify exactly where it was, but I'll tell you it was a camp. It was a campground that's well known to be haunted. We decided to go camping there in 2014. So we went camping over there, and just to go tell ghost stories and stuff. And, guy is Portuguese, so he got no problem talking to people, right? So the caretaker of the place was over there walking around. The guy goes, hey, husband, hey, you get any ghost stories or what? This place haunted, I heard, yeah? What's going on? Where's the ghost? And then he explained who we are. No, they were happy. They were like, oh yeah, well come. I've opened up all the buildings for you. I've opened up the kitchen. This is what. And they gave us the whole tour of the whole campground. They explained to us that underneath this one building, and they opened it up for us as well, there was a mass burial site for children. Um, Now, I heard both. I heard them say it was pre-contact, which doesn't make sense to me. Why would there be a mass burial site for children before Captain Cook? And then I heard it was post-contact. So I'm unsure as to what it is, but under this building, the basement of the building is just all sand. They store the canoes there. They store the life jackets over there, all that kind of stuff. There's some type of sand under the building. Sorry, that was a dog. So we got to investigate it and check it out. It was good fun. It was cool. It was really interesting. We found something there, and my interpretation of the story is, I've learned to use my gift and not question it and see what comes. Was that there was a guy haunting the area. The guy was trying to torment the guests, but the children wouldn't let him. The ghost children were watching out for the campers. There were ghost stories, but nothing really much happened to the campers. There was only the workers. So we had taken a picture and we saw him in the ghost in the corner. It was really interesting, just like hovering, watching this kind of thing. Really dark spirit, really angry, really upset. We managed to cross him over, and we came back a few weeks later. Because we felt that it was not done. That one ghost, that one spirit was a person that had died and was tricked staying there. There was something else in the back controlling that person, as well as the children. That movie, The Haunting,
Mm-hmm.
kind of comes into mind, where the children, are trying to protect the people and all of that kind of stuff as well. And it's one big one that's the one causing the children, chaos and pain and stuff. They reburied all of the evening for the children in a little rock mound, all of the bones into a little rock mound on the campground, but they didn't label it. So walking by, we saw children playing on it. We saw people putting beer on it, all kinds of stuff, and it's like, So they finally put up a sign when I think it was Kayla. Kayla talked to them. She got a good reputation, and they ended up putting up a sign saying what it was. But the second time we came back to find the boss, the one that's pulling the strings. This one was not a ghost, was not a person. This one was a straight up demon, for lack of a better word. But this demon wasn't the kind I'm gonna flex and scare all you guys. This was more of the one that hid in the background and let other people do its dirty work. So he tricked the guy that died. I believe the guy that had died was a skydiver that plummeted through the cabin, and to his death, and then his spirit was stuck there because this other demon convinced him that he wasn't going to heaven. And basically, you might be wondering why. Why does he bother to do this? Because if you there are good forces, which we call the police force. These are angels, these are guardians, these are guides, these are spirits that look for the bad to take them away. They're doing God's work, right? But the bad ones can hide and they don't want to do anything because then they give themselves away. This one didn't. This one didn't want to give itself away. So Doug had explained to me what was going on way before this kind of scenario that played out. We went over there. We started with me, Guy, a few other of us. We started by blessing the entire grounds, all of the cabins, all of the tents, all of the buildings. We holy water, salt, prayer, the entire location. And then we got to the one building where the children's burial was, where the whole thing went down, where the most funky energy was. And we blessed everywhere around the building but the door to the basement. So we went in and we went in acting. Okay, hey, we're a bunch of ghost hunters like they see on the kind of the TV. We're going to go over there, we're going to ghost hunt, we're going to find it. So we're playing the game, we're trying to coax this spirit out. We're like, I heard that there's a little girl here. Can the little girl come out and speak to us? Because this bad thing would pretend to be a little girl. We knew. We were trying to get it to come out so that it would be captured. It didn't fall for it. While we did this, two of our friends got attacked, possessed, kind of thing. One of them was this big local guy from the west side, and he was like, when we're standing in the basement, he's leaning up against one of the pipes, and then I see him start to just waver back and forth, and start to get a little unfocused, and I'm like, brother, you okay or what? You all right? He's like, yeah, just something's happening. I'm like, okay, what's going on? He's like, I don't know, but for some reason, my brother just jumped into my head. I'm like, okay, tell me about your brother. He's like, my brother died when he was a little kid. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. He's like, I don't know why I'm thinking of it. My brother died before I was born. So he never met his brother that died as a child, but he couldn't get him out of his mind. Maybe about 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, he starts to go limp. We catch him and we drag him out of there and we sit him on the wall. I give him a little Punohu, a little rock that was a guardian of mine, and he grabs onto it and starts squeezing it as hard as he can, like it's a lifeline. That's the guardian, and that's the first time I've seen that guardian do his thing. Is my friend was squeezing this rock, and we were finally able to bring him back, and he just started crying. And as I'm worrying about him, one of my other friends, you might remember her walking, Alicia. She walks out. Well, she's almost carried out, and I'm like, "What's going on?" She started speaking like a child, like, "Get out! You guys need to leave." I do a horrible child voice, but it was like this little high-pitched voice, even for her, it was saying, "Get out! You guys need to leave. Get out!" Something like it's coming, and we're like, "What?" And then she just repeated it. She was possessed by a child that was telling us to leave. So my other friends pulled her out, and I gave her the crystal that I had, which was another rock, another crystal that was a female guardian. And when she grabbed it, she came back to me. She's looking around like, "What the hell? Why are you guys carrying me? How did I get outside? What's happening?" We went back in and we prayed. We went back in and we decided, you know what, this is not working. This thing already knows our intention. So we stood in a circle, and my friend had an obelisk. It was the random word generator. I didn't say much of anything that whole night, maybe one or two words, and we're talking 4 or 5 hours, maybe even more. And it's in the middle of us when we're praying. And I think it was the obelisk 3.0. It didn't just say the robotic words like, actually it did for the most part, like France, like that, just really monotonous voice. But as we start saying the Our Father, the thing speaks up in the middle of all of us. It says, "Scared." just like that, as we're saying the Our Father. So I look up at everybody, and they look a little worried. I'm like, all right, guys, just continue to pray. Let's say it again. Let's say it a few more times. And as we continue to say the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, right towards the ending of the third time, something flew out from the back corner, out the front door. Best way to say it was it flew. It knocked over life vests, knocked them off of their hanger onto the floor, knocked a bottle of water out of my friend's backpack, and just went boom right out the door. This was the bad thing that was trying to hide in there. They couldn't hide in the presence of the Lord's Prayer. As soon as that was done, we blessed the door, we closed that area off, and it could not get back in. Guy spoke to the caretakers after, and they mentioned that in the last few days, all the electronics, after we had done our thing, were malfunctioning. You have to punch in a code to get in. The code would not work. The locks would just lock by themselves. Even the deadbolt lock in the office locked the office with nobody in there. They couldn't open. They had to break open the window. This thing was trying to get back in, but it couldn't because we had blessed everything. And we didn't bless the office, but it couldn't hide it. And a few days later, after that, Doug called me back. I didn't tell Doug anything what we were doing. And he's like, Joe, good work. They told me they got him. I'm like, what? They're like, oh, the police force. Cece, that's his wife. She was on the other side. She's like, what they wanted me to tell you, they caught the thing that you were trying to catch. They finally got him, and they dragged him back down the purgatory where he belongs, or hell, or whatever it's right. So for me, that was an interesting experience. I was like plagued with the children. I want to go back there because I haven't been back since. I want to go back over there and check it out and see if the area is more at peace now. That kind of stuff. Maybe the children are happy and playing with the people or something, but I imagine there's no oppressive force in there. Anyway, yes, I'll still win.
Yeah, I'm listening. Fantastic story. Thank you as always, because I know that's what really gets people tuned in is not so much always like the history that we talked about, although that's very important. That is the frame for the portrait of the haunting, but the actual experiences that unfold in places where these type of tragedies have taken place. And of course, what's interesting as well is when all these other types of spirits kind of like get involved with things. I remember a dear friend of mine, we used to talk about hauntings all the time, including Hawaiian spirits. And one of the things that she would always talk about is this overlap that takes place. So there's the physical realm and everything that's going on within it, and there's the overlap with the spiritual as well. As a matter of fact, she had a vision once. I won't go into entire detail because it's her story, and I try not to take other people's experiences away from them. But needless to say, she talked about more or less the downtown area, where she said there was like a whole bunch of spirits that were just wandering around. And around that time, we were talking about the bodies that were found on Queen Street as well. For any of you that are interested in looking for this one particular place, it's in the back of Kauai Hau. There's a little ahu there, and that's where they interred these people that were part of this unfortunate part of Hawaii's history with illness. There's another place at the Hono Okaha area location in the back of a building where there's another ahu as well, that's dedicated to the bodies that were found. According to what I heard as well, both me and Joe, we were asked to do a ghost tour. So we did one, and of course we talked about plague and everything. And from what I understand, this is just from the people that gave us the information, that it was so bad with what was going on with people dying that they were dying so quickly, they would just like bury them in these 3 foot deep graves, like one and then another one and another one and another one. And probably in time, maybe it's what they did was they uncovered with the development of commercialization in Hawaii, they were able to uncover these bodies and put them in a place where they could hopefully be at rest. I know also that near that particular ahu, My friend grew up in a place called Quinn Lane, and interestingly enough, it kind of that particular experience ties into the Kauai haunting phenomenon. He went to bed one night and woke up with someone pressing down on him and holding him down. And he was completely and entirely helpless, couldn't do anything about the situation. And I myself have experienced that as well. And so he was terrified by that. But eventually, of course, the spiritual presence, angry, I think, or otherwise, did let him go. Now that ties into Kaka'ako Fire Station as well, because and a few other fire stations where they talk about these spirits. They call them choking ghosts, choke neck. These spirits come to people at night and they hold them down and they do things to them. And to me, I kind of wonder, I pose the question, you know, are they still trying to get some type of notice for what happened to them? It was such a terrible thing that happened. Are they trying to reach out and get our attention about what happened long ago? I want to share a story with Joe that was kind of interesting that happened with us a few years ago. We were at Kaka'ako Water Park or something, right? You wanted to go there one night. You remember that story,
Yeah.
Joe? We're sitting there with
Yeah.
my friend. We won't mention her name, but she's very gifted. Remember that night?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was interesting. We were sitting
Remember
there.
the orb picture?
Yeah, we were sitting there, and we were talking, and then my friend goes, there's this woman here right now. I think it was a woman. There's this woman here right now. And she's trying to get my attention, and so we listened to what she had to say. My friend, who was extremely gifted, and she described this woman that was dressed like in, I guess what you would call like a hospital gown or something like that. And she was very sick and she was trying to again reach out and get some help with her situation. And from what my friend told me, that there was that she was trying to redirect her. I guess she saw on that overlap that exists. She saw like that there was, or something along those lines. I have to ask her again later on. But there was like a makeshift, she also said there was like a makeshift hospital nearby. So again, keep in mind that during the time of these epidemics, they're so bad, you couldn't really do much. Medicine is not even close to where we're at right now and the way that they were trying to treat their patients and everything. So I kind of wonder, and that's the next question I pose to Joe is, do you think that they're trying to reach out and get our attention? I mean, it might be as plain as the nose on our face, but what do you think is going on with those type of spiritual experiences with ghosts and such?
I never thought of that before.
Hmm.
I think, for the most part, I'm still a fan of the idea that most hauntings occur for a reason.
Hmm.
Like, to put you on another path, to scare you straight kind of thing. I know a lot of people that have been on drugs that are haunted, but by then, the ghosts don't bother them more than drugs,
Hmm.
than their cravings and stuff. But yeah, I think that maybe this whole choking ghost thing could be because what I've heard, they're not that bad. I've
Hmm.
never had one happen to me, so I can never. I can't say from experience, but the choking ghost, it sounds to me like it's more or less scary, terrifying than altering. You know what I mean? Your
Hmm.
life doesn't change. You're not brought to the point of being dead. It doesn't kill anybody anyway. If it did, we wouldn't know about it anyway, right? So I guess I can't really say that either. But I think it's hard to say all of it, but some of it, I know that I read a little bit of that book, The Terror That Comes in the Night. It's a whole book about that, written from a doctor that did like 15 years, 16 years of research on the subject. It's happened all over the world. There's no common denominators. Every race has had it happen to them constantly since the beginning of recorded history. It's the most commonplace haunting in the world, the choking ghost. Some cultures say it's a witch. Some cultures say it's your grandpa. Sometimes it'll happen to you when you're lying in the bed of somebody who had died. And the people that own the house will tell you, oh yeah, whoever sleeps in that bed, they get woken up by somebody choking. Or sometimes it's a person. It doesn't matter where they sleep, what bed they sleep in, they're going to keep getting choked. Other times it'll happen to you once in your life, and that's it. It's a completely random occurrence, once or twice in your life. Um, it's there's a lot of data about it, but there's not a lot of patterns. You know what I mean? I'm more of a belief that it's more attuned to the individual experiencing. What do you think about that?
I can see the where that would be a very interesting thing to even to have a whole show about as well. I mean, there's other things to discuss as well that could probably play into sudden death. I mean, a lot of these people died, you know, suddenly too. I mean, very quickly they died. Some of them lingered and everything else. And a disease, of course, affects people differently as well. But you know, I kind of wondered too if some of these deaths were just so quick that you know again you know the whole thing when you talk about NDEs and everything else and the other side and their experiences, you know, they kind of like see things that are going on around them as well. And in most cases, if not almost all, they have the idea that yes, I'm dead. But say that if we look at that whole process as well and like they're on the other side and they maybe don't translate exactly the same way as an NDE, is it possible because of the way they have passed and everything too? Not even the whole idea of unresolved business, which is a classic viewpoint on ghosts lingering earthbound, but just the fact that it was just so quick that they're still here, they're still trying to figure things out and such. And of course, we're all human, so that comes with a range of emotions too. So I mean, who knows if they're using those type of emotions as well. But what you said has a very valid point. I think it just hits a little bit closer to home because of the fact that I experienced choking ghosts 4 times in my life. I went through that as well. So, but as far as everything else is concerned, I honestly feel, as an example, you know, when you're out there in the field, and I'm sure Joe can attest to that as well, or even doing ghost tours, some of these locations are very, very, their whole energy just changes at night. And it's not just the idea of, well, you know what, I've heard a story about this place. You just feel it, and you have a more intuitive connection with it. Talking about missionaries. It's a very famous location in downtown Honolulu, and I know Joe knows about it quite well, but it's connected to the missionary history, missionaries, a landmark. And I know that one night we were down there in that area, and we were in the back of this landmark, and we had set up some EMF meters. And what was amazing was that one of them would actually answer our questions. Literally, like you would ask a question about the location and everything else, they would answer. I believe one of the questions had to do with, is there anybody buried near here? Because as we were using the EMF, we go to this one location and then it would just go off, and I would just point the EMF meter down and it would just go crazy. Could have been anything, right? But it was interesting.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
what makes it a little bit more compelling is I was sitting down, and while they were doing these sessions, trying to figure out who exactly is around in this area. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, I felt like someone touching my shoulder. And I'm wearing an entirely black silk shirt sitting down. And there slowly started to appear, and I wish someone had taken a picture of it, a handprint on my shoulder. And, you know, I didn't want to move because I'm like, I don't know what this is or if it's going to get worse or whatever. But I began to feel like that it was okay, almost like a comforting type of feeling. And then slowly but surely it went away. And as it went away, the handprint went as well. What's interesting to me about that is we talk about connection with history and spirits. So I'm kind of wondering if that was some spirit. I'm not saying it was a missionary spirit, but some spirit trying to reach out and just trying to get our attention. And maybe the EMF spikes wasn't enough to get our attention. Another good thing that I heard, what was interesting, is one of the people that were there, then I said, you know something? He said it was kind of like comforting. And then he went on to say, well, what if it was a missionary? Almost like a priest putting their hand on your shoulder and saying, hey, you know what? It's going to be okay. So I just wanted to chime in with that because, I mean, you know where I'm talking about, Joe. You know exactly where I'm
Oh yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
You know exactly where that place is. And yeah, you have any experiences with that as well? Because I know it connects with what we're talking about too. Have you had
Like with
experiences with
kind
that?
of things, like positive experiences, good stuff.
Anything with that location that's connected to the
Oh, that
missionaries.
location.
Yeah.
I felt a lot, but I don't really have many stories. Right, I never went there nearly as much as you did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah, Kaka. I mean, I'm rather near the location. However, we do have a lot of stories. And you went the Kawai House Cemetery, right?
Yes.
One of my favorite stories. I don't even tell you. But remember when I found your wallet?
Mm-hmm.
We were walking through the graveyard, and one of the tourists on the tour found the wallet. And I opened it up, and I see Obaki Hunter's picture on it. I'm like, hey, dude, I got your wallet, man.
Oh
I gave it to you
yeah.
that evening.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Duh. I had just been there a while ago. Talk about synchronicity and
Yeah,
all of
this is
that
right
stuff.
after we had met, too. Yeah? So I'm like, hey,
Yes.
wait, I know this guy.
Yeah.
um, there was a lot of things. There's more books we have. There was a story of there was a time on the tour where I'm telling the story of a little boy that haunts the cemetery, and this other guy was being a jackass. He was a tourist, and, even his wife was embarrassed because he was just being a complete jackass, and he's just goofing off and acting stupid, like dead child, I like dead children, just really weird stuff like that, and and like not even a minute later, he's walking and he's like, oh, and my camera stopped. And as he turns to play with the camera, he jumps up. He's like, ah! I'm like, what? He's like, something bit me. And so immediately I'm there. I got pictures of this. I showed the flashlight that he had a little child's teeth marks on the side of his hand, just below the finger. I took a few pictures of it. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, that looks like a kid's bite mark. And he's like, yeah, what the heck? I'm like, don't make fun of the kids. It's just kind of, oh, I'm sorry. He tried to laugh it off, but he didn't. He didn't succeed. There was another time where we had gone over there, and there's a lot of children in there. We used the ghost radar back when that was like revolutionary, 2010, 2011. The obelisk part of it, the random word generator, and we had a conversation with the spirits. I forget the exact words, and I know I've been down in my stories, but it was like we're walking towards the cemetery, and we get this really strong feeling that we shouldn't be there. And so we asked, should we come? And it said away or beware or something like that, or negative. It said like we shouldn't come into the graveyard. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And it said, and like, who are we talking to? I can't remember the words, but I remember something. Yeah, it was a child because it told me that it wanted. Oh yeah, I said, okay, what would you guys like? We always try to honor the things. We always try to offer hope, right? Offering for the spirits because we're in the area and telling stories, and it's nice to give back. So when we go over there, we are like, oh, what would you, what can we do? What can we do to make things better? What can we do to make things good? And then the word popped up and it said offering. And I'm like, oh wow, offering. Huh? I said, okay, what kind of offering do you want? And then everyone's ghost radar started going off. The words were candy, ice cream, cake, cookies, all of that stuff just started going off, like all these different devices. I'm like, oh yeah, these are the children. So the next time we went over there, we brought like M&M's M&M's bag, and we left it over by the burial mound, the Awi with the children. Yeah, it was an interesting. Over there, there's not many negative experiences. There's a lot of negativity, but like there's a lot of things to be afraid of for sure. But the Hawaiian ghosts, I like Hawaiian ghosts. Hawaiian ghosts are nice and friendly. They do what's Punohu. When I help out with the blessing that the house is haunted by a Hawaiian ghost, the Hawaiian ghost is usually angry, but not vengeful, not doing damage, not choking, but he's just really angry. Not like the Samoan ghost stories, but those are scary.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese ghost stories, that kind of stuff. It's just there's a lot of different stuff. I like the Hawaiian ghost stories.
Mm-hmm.
The Hawaiian ghost stories, for the most part, the ghosts look for what's Pono, right? Yeah, there was another time I saw a ghost man. You know that big wall that goes around the construction area, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
When they started building the building next door. The wall was a good 8-9 feet high. And we're walking by it, shining the light over it, and I see a hand sticking up above the wall on the other side. Like somebody had jumped up and reached their hand over it. This just pale white hand. And so I ran to where the chain link fence was, and I kind of peeked through it at the little thing. And there wasn't anybody there. There wasn't anything there. But I saw that white, pale hand that came up. My flashlight caught it and everything. It was pretty cool.
Ah, interesting. I kind of, again, kind of wonder though, again, going back to the overlap thing, you brought up an interesting point about the good experiences versus the bad and everything else. And, I mean, the whole thing with the illnesses and everything that took place, again, it wasn't just the Hawaiians that died. It was also missionaries and other people as well that got sick during that time frame. So I kind of, my mind is open to the suggestion that that's why these different type of experiences are out there and they take place and such. I mean, it's just sometimes I just have to say as a person working in the field, there would be times that I would go to one of these places and you could just feel like there was something there. There was one night I was at that location where it has based upon the landmark for the history of the missionaries. And I was just by myself and I had walked up and down that area looking at this wall that's up front. As a matter of fact, you know about that photo that I took of that, what looks like a missionary sitting on that wall. So, yeah, yep.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah, it's an interesting photo. So I'm walking up and down and I'm looking at the wall and everything. And, once in a while you get this feeling like there's somebody there, especially near that area where that photograph was taken. But at one point I
I
just,
always feel that, man. I always feel like there's somebody watching you from upstairs.
yes, exactly. See, that's a little bit of a giveaway, but it's true. You feel like someone's watching you. So I stop and I look at the wall and talk about illness. I have it somewhere. I have this old briefcase I used to put my equipment in. And there was this kukui nut that was there. And attached to the kukui nut was a message in essence saying something like, I am the healer. And I'm like, what the heck? It just was there. It wasn't there before. And then poof, here's this kukui nut with a message attached to it saying, I am the healer. I am not sure. What I'm saying? We're talking about this particular type of subject, but it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it was something like a spiritual artifact or just something that I may have overlooked, but interesting that it did say that as well. But yeah, I think different types of situations do occur.
Yeah,
Could
definitely.
be, could be. Someone saying maybe give me something to snack on. I don't know. People don't usually eat kukui nut. Usually. Now, at this point, I would like to kind of like open things up a bit. I should have mentioned it earlier. If anyone has anything that they would like to ask as a question. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. It was a very interesting photo. It really is. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I didn't catch this. Usually when we're doing the conversations and talking, I kind of have to pay attention to what we're doing. So if I don't say hello, it's not like I'm being rude. But if anyone has anything else or if anyone has anything that they would like to chime in, again, sometimes, maybe we're accurate in everything that we say. Maybe we're a little bit off. But let's try to keep it on, especially when later on we get comments coming in. Let's just keep it very respectful and everything. The world as it is chaotic. Just like back in those days, the tragedy of the illnesses, people were divided because of this, and it created a lot of negative outcomes. We're back to square A now. We are there again. Because of this pandemic, people are divided and everything. So if you have something that you want to say, like, oh, maybe this date was not correct, just, let's just do it in a very respectful manner. But if anyone else has something to say, go ahead, feel free to chime in. Joe's a great guest, and I'm sure he would be happy to answer any type of questions. And if not, we'll just start to wrap it up for now. And then, of course, later
I
on.
wanted to share something before we wrap it up. Too. Not
Sure,
really a ghost story, but a little piece of history.
sure, go right ahead.
This was
Oh wait, hold on one second. We're getting a question here.
yeah.
Joe, have you encountered or had communicated with ghost spirits who were inflicted by a pandemic in our islands, and what happened if so?
Ghosts. Yeah, I've been wondering about that. Ghosts and spirits who are inflicted, like that would be like going to Kalau by a pandemic. I'm not too sure, but Kalau
On Molokai.
ghosts that I've wondered about that. I'm not sure exactly about a pandemic related, but maybe those kids at the camp could have been considered. Yeah,
Hmm.
if they had died from one of those.
Hmm. Interesting.
Is,
Okay.
is that your question? What have you encountered or had communicated with ghost spirits who were inflicted by a pandemic in our islands, and what had happened?
Hmm. Hmm. I think mine's was more or less. Well, you know what? I guess I'll let you say your story. Then I have kind of like a spooky thing. Now, I don't know if it's exactly connected to it, but go ahead, Joe. I'll go with what you were going to say.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
think on that for a minute. Uli. Um, Carolyn, one of my moderators and good friends, shared a post back in April when all this was going on. It was about Queen Liliuokalani. When King Kalakaua was on his world tour in 1881, the Queen was in charge of Hawaii. Around May of 1881, a Chinese ship that arrived in Honolulu, they were stopped and the passengers were confirmed to have smallpox. Smallpox had wiped out a huge chunk of the native Hawaiians in the 1850s. And so they were paranoid, kind of like the government ran out of coffins. Literally, so many people died. But in 1881, 30 years later, things were different, right? But still, Liliuokalani, when she found out that smallpox was offshore, she closed all the harbors around. A lot of people didn't like the idea, especially the business community and all of that stuff as well. But she closed down everything. She quarantined everything. She pushed her own church to cancel services, being afraid that people would get smallpox in the church. It was everything, but without the toilet paper shortage that we're going through.
Yeah.
She not only a woman back in this age that was not white but Native Hawaiian, not only defied the business community of the rich white elites, but members of her own church to demonstrate her resolve. She cut her staff down big time, sending them home with food so they wouldn't be exposed as well. Her actions were deeply controversial in her time. This was 1881, over 100 years ago, but the numbers speak for themselves. 1853 claimed over 11,000 lives on 4 islands. And during this time, when this one happened with Queen, 1881, it claimed less than 400 on 2 islands. So that's a big difference. It's something to keep in mind in this perspective. History does repeat itself. What we're going through, people went through without Wi-Fi or air conditioning, TV. Just imagine that for. Now, go ahead, Obama.
Oh no, that's well, again, I mean, considering all things considered, I mean, there's always cause and effect, right? So something happens, then there's a response to what is going on. But yeah, very well ahead of her time, with the approach to what was going on, and of course, in today's world, we are just, I don't know, we're trying to get everything on point, and I know that's important, just to just be on the same page. It's matter of fact, ultimately I think we have no choice but to be on the same page in the same damn book, and just trying to work together. Because I've heard things like, if the vaccine comes around, there's some people that are saying they're not going to get the vaccine. That's kind of like troubling. That's really like far fringed out there type of thinking. Yeah, I mean, we really have to work on this and being together, and trying to work this out. But I would like to share. Excuse me. You have some water here. I would like to share something that was rather interesting, and I don't know again if it was a combination of two different types of situation taking place. But one moment. So this happened a number of years ago. We were near Olani, and I was out with my talented friend, and we were looking around. As a matter of fact, Joe, this is a place where you used to go on your ghost tour, and you used to stop and you used to talk about the children and everything in downtown on your walking tour, where the banyan trees are. Banyan trees, by the way, folks, are notorious spirit magnets. And so we were in that area, and I'm taking photos and such, and looking around. I may have done EVP. All of a sudden, my talented friend goes, "Ooh, what is that? Ugh, what is that smell?" And she's like really upset about this offending smell. And I'm like, "What do you smell?" I'm like sniffing the air, like I don't smell nothing. She goes, "Yeah, that's bad." I mean, and she was telling me that it was connected, with a spirit. And so finally, we decided to retreat because it was getting pretty intense with that smell. And so we left, and in fact, we started walking towards this missionary landmark. So we're walking down in that direction, and as soon as we come out of the area of the trees, in front of us, I swear, if you've ever seen these Japanese, that's the only way I can say it, like these Japanese ghost movies, there was this person that just kind of like out of nowhere was just in front of us with, it was a male with their head down and like this long hair, white clothing, looked like, I don't know, dirty or something. Could have been homeless. Yeah, I get that part for those of you that are watching. Proceeded to walk in front of us all the way down to the landmark. But we kind of like gave him, him or her like leeway, like, okay, you go ahead and walk in front of us. Turned around the corner to the landmark. We got there, we turned the corner, poof, no one there, gone. Then I started to smell it out of nowhere, like, what in the world is that smell? What in the world is that? I was like, it was just overwhelming. It was rank. It was bad. And long story short, we used prayer. I used prayer that night, and I prayed for it to stop. And fortunately, it did. The smell went away, gone. It's just rank. It wasn't sulfur. Although I've encountered that, as I told in my story about my attack by the devil. But this is what gets me, and it kind of makes me wonder. This person really, I mean, I don't know if they was pushing a cart or anything, but was leaning over and just walking. I just kind of wonder, I don't know, I mean, that's also near Kawai and everything else, where the Ahu was. Is this one of these people that are walking around? Maybe not so much for the fact that they're wandering, but they're caught up. They're lost. You ever get lost in your thoughts? You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff happens to you. You're lost in your thinking and stuff like that. Or you're going through you still think that you're sick and because I mean, that looked like someone that was in a hospital. That really looked like someone that was from a hospital. And then I kind of think about, what my, again, talented friend said about seeing a spirit that looked like dressed in hospital clothing in the makeshift hospitals that were nearby. So That's kind of like me putting that into perspective with the situation as well. Also near the Hono'okaha area, my brother had encountered this, spiritual energies that were restless adjacent to Quinn Lane where everything happened. So, do we have some kind of map to work with? And should we address the map somehow? Do we have a responsibility with the work that we do in trying to at least, like what Joe did? And I give Joe credit. By the way, go check out Hawaiian Hauntings. I'm going to let Joe have the last word too with everything else. Check out Hawaiian Hauntings because they're very good at being an outreach for scenarios that take place with spirits. And I think we should try our best. This is a place of aloha. I think if there's a place where we're going to start to overcome our set of circumstances. One of them is going to be here, but we need to address them, and we need to be very respectful to them, respectful to the culture and everything else. I remember we did a show at that place, the landmark, and my friend said, "Well, what are you going to talk about when it comes to the spirits?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of trying to figure that out right now." And she goes, "Why don't you talk about telling people to remember them? Remember these places, remember the history, remember the struggles and everything else that the Hawaiian people had to go through." So maybe that should be added into the whole thing about spirits in Hawaii and what they had to unfortunately uh, get through as well. So anyway, Joe, last words on anything else that you would like to share as
No, that's
well.
very, yeah, I'll share one last one, but that was very interesting how, yeah, to remember them, to share them, to tell their stories, to tell their, strife, their pain, so we learn from it and don't have to repeat it. Um, that got me thinking to share Hawaiian stuff. I mean, as you know, I'm Native Hawaiian and I'm almost an activist. I hurt for the Hawaiian community when all these injustices were done. But I told this story before. It's a fast story, one of my favorite ones, so it's kind of funny. Kamehameha Day, a while back, 2011 maybe. We end the tour in front of the Kamehameha statue on King Street, right? So I did a little treat. I wanted to share us a ghost story that wasn't part of the tour, but I wanted to share one of my favorite ones for Kamehameha, for King Kamehameha, for his stay in his presence. And as I'm sharing this story, in my pocket, my phone opens up YouTube. You know how you butt dial people? Well, my phone butt YouTubed a song, Hawaiian sovereignty song. I thought that was hilarious. A lot of the locals on the tour just started busting out laughing. My phone has started up in my pocket twice now, on YouTube playing music, playing songs. I just wanted to share that. It is a good thing to remember the history, remember the culture, remember the happiness and the sadness and all of that stuff as well, right? Especially more so now. We should go back down there, bro, if we can, I mean, this would be a really good time to remember the spirits of past pandemics, past plague outbreaks. You know what I mean? Just to make sure that we give them a voice because their whole life, their whole everything ended because of one of these. We're so lucky enough to be surviving ours, right? It would be interesting to hear what they have to say, and I think it would be respectful too to hear what they have to tell us. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got there.
Interesting question just came in from the listening audience from Jessica. By the way, aloha, Jessica Ming. Good to see you. It's a really good question because I know you probably love this one. Excuse me, and you've talked about it in the past. Do you have a lot of ley lines in Hawaii? Take it away, Joe.
Oh, ley lines. In terms of ley lines, as the global ley lines, not quite so much, but there's a few. However, if you go on a smaller, more micro scale, the heiaus were actually built on a series of lines, almost like a grid, that line up to positions of the stars that rise and set. For example, you're standing on the Punohu heiau over on Waimea on a certain day in November. This day is the first time you will see the Makali'i star for like 9 months. The star appears above the horizon just as the sun directly sets at the tip of Kaina Point. That's the only day it touches the tip of Kaina Point. It's said that during that time, that whole line from kind of point through Pu'uomohuka all the way through is activated for a couple minutes. I believe Judd Trail is on another one of those where it activates. We did an investigation where I pulled up the map and I looked on the grid. This house was on intersection of ley lines, and that one was really interesting. It wasn't a haunting as much as it was energy from the ley lines that fluctuated and kept people awake and had all the signs. Electronics that ran through it malfunctioning, a change of temperature, insomnia, all of that kind of stuff. It's very good question. I love that kind of stuff.
Me too. I really do. And I know that one of the things that we talked about in the past, well, and I was very fortunate. Joe's a very generous person. And so a couple of times I was able to go on the Oahu ghost tours when they had them. And we used to go up to the Manoa Chinese Cemetery and talk about how that place was kind of along in a reference point with how it was selected because of where it was at globally, and I'm sure on a spiritual level as well. Correct, Joe?
Yeah, that one may have been different, may have not. I never really tried to do that, but the guy who built Manoa Chinese Cemetery, Lam Ching,
Mm-hmm.
my grand ancestor, he was a master at Punyi, which is kind of exactly that. It's taking the mountains, the stars, the ocean, the directions, and finding out that it's like feng shui, but with nature and on a bigger scale. So I would say it's kind of like how the energy flows. And he built the graveyard to harness the flow of energy up the valley. Right. That found that part interesting as well. This guy in the 40s, 50s knew what he
Mm-hmm.
was doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Charity, thank you so much for the compliment. I really do try to put out some interesting programs. As a matter of fact, I mean, it's just me and all of you, like in the old days, and I'm sure Joe would agree about this, agree with this as well. And maybe that's where I'm trying to get the flavor and the feel of this type of shows that we're all sitting around talking story, And in the old days as well, I know my dad used to tell me stories about, no more much electricity and stuff, right? So maybe that's where the lantern comes in. And people used to have to carry lanterns around, and that would be their form of light. I know that my dad also told me that where his dad grew up, I think it was in Kahalu or something. Anyway, in those days the bathroom was outside, so you had to grab a lantern like that and go out into the dark. And these bathrooms are not near the house. You got to go out there and walk out into the dark and go to these bathrooms. And that feeling that my dad used to talk about spirits being around. And I believe that different times in history can reflect upon how our spiritual perception is. And people had more experiences back then with ghosts too, because there were less things distracting. So a show like this provides something where it's less distracting, just this light, just me and you talking story, and having wonderful people like Joe come on and continue that type of tradition, which I think in no way, shape, or form we cannot let this die. We have to perpetuate it. The Hawaiian culture was not based upon written language; it was an oral language. And again, remembering them as well and how wonderful storytelling is. It's great to have people like Joe on. As a matter of fact, Joe, if you don't mind, I'd like to do a show on Judd Trail one night. Let's just rock and roll with Judd Trail, because I mean I know there's a lot of stuff to talk about with
It'll be
Judd Trail.
interesting to do it at Judd Trail.
Hey, you want to do that? Let's rock and roll with that too, man. We just bring all of this together. What is Kim Chi saying? I like the light and minimal aspect of these videos too. It feels more at home. Thank you, Kim Chi. That's very nice of you. I really appreciate that. And these shows will continue to go on. Tomorrow night, we have a great show coming up as well with me and you and the light and whatever else is listening out there besides us. I'm having my guest, Jamie. We're going to be talking about haunted Louisiana, or like how me and Joe and other people we get together, we talk about where we live and everything, and our experiences, and anything else that Jamie would like to share. I've had a fascination with Louisiana, New Orleans, and such for a very long time. As a matter of fact, before we go, everybody, aloha, Ed. Nice to see you. Before we go, Joe, can you give us a roundabout your impressions? I know you've been to I guess New Orleans and Louisiana. And of course, very well connected with Jamie. What were your thoughts about that place? Maybe this could be a good segue into tomorrow night's show. What would you like to say about that?
It has a lot of history, a lot of culture, a lot of and New Orleans has like voodoo, and but there's a lot of stuff that's not really quite understood. Like voodoo, from learning it, isn't bad.
Hmm.
Most of the voodoo is, I mean, of course, it's more exciting to talk about voodoo dolls and black magic, but you go to the real voodoo shops around there, and oh man, the energy is good. You go to the tourist voodoo shops, and it's like, ugh,
Mm,
you know.
okay. Hmm.
But it's about healing and stuff. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a lot of it has a much different vibe than Hawaii, but still kind of the same. Kind of the French Quarter reminded me of like Chinatown.
Ah, well, you know what? Maybe what we can do is a compliment from one show to the next, if you like to. We can do like a mini show, maybe about half hour, 45 minutes. Um, your impressions, Native Hawaiian and New Orleans, and I know you went through some stuff that you're not talking about right now, which I'm glad you didn't bring up, by the way, my friend. Let's just pause with that one. And if you like, we can do a compliment to what Jamie said. And I would like to hear. Actually, I'd be fascinated to hear her side. Having living there and everything else, and then you coming into the picture and visiting. Does that sound good too as a future show that we can do?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, incomparable, legendary status confirmed Joe Punohu, storyteller extraordinaire, and also the founder of Hawaiian Hauntings. Again, Joe, let's talk a little bit about Hawaiian Hauntings. It's always good to kind of like refresh that into our conversation. Tell us about it and how people can get a hold of you and join Hawaiian Hauntings as well, because it is a
Yeah.
great group.
I'm not fancy enough yet to have a YouTube platform. I got it. I don't do much with the YouTube channel, but I have a Facebook that seems to take up all of my time. My friends. Facebook group called Hawaiian Hauntings, made in 2014 July. We have what 15,000 people now,
Yes.
and the amazing part of it is there's no trolls.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good group.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good group. People share, people respect, and if they don't respect, we kick them out. You don't have to agree with people, but you have to respect. Answer the questions, enjoy the stories, enjoy the pictures, the experiences, a lot of interactive conversations that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you need to get a hold of me, just go through Facebook, Hawaiian Hauntings. You'll see, the founder, Joe Punohu. And yeah, just send me a message. A lot of people do. If you need
Kim,
advice, that kind of stuff, I'm always here. That's what I do. I learn and I grow from your experience as well. Hopefully, it can help you if you need it. Yeah.
okay, cool.
So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jessica pointed out that Kimchi. I'm sorry, Kimchi. I didn't see your question. Again, it's just like multitasking between the conversations that are going on out there and also with my guests. Okay, so Kimchi says, "Do you think colonization has affected the spirits of Hawaii?" Sorry if you have to go soon. You don't have to answer. Good question. Very excellent question, by the way.
Right.
So, Joe, what do you think about that?
The spirits of Hawaii versus the ghosts. Yeah. It has affected Hawaii on a huge spiritual level, not only just from the plagues and the deaths and the diseases that were brought over by foreigners, but by all of the digging up of the ground, all of the unearthing of the bones, all of the dredging of the lo'i, the farmlands, the agriculture lands that people had tended for centuries, now turned into hotels. Yeah, a lot of the spirits are not happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
People no longer revere the ground. I've come across cases where people's houses were haunted because they're dirty. A
Mm-hmm.
ghost will actually haunt their house because this is a ghost whose bones are buried under the house, and the people don't clean their house. It's disrespecting the spirit that's under their house.
Mm-hmm.
They throw their cigarette butts on the ground. They leave their garbage outside. They don't clean nothing, that kind of stuff, and their house is haunted by that Hawaiian warrior or chief because of that. And I think colonialization has a huge thing, has made a huge impact on the spirits. A lot of the spirits, the higher vibration ones, the ones that were never human, they more or less go up into the mountains now to get away from all the noise, all the Wi-Fi, all this, all that, all the little invisible vibrations that we, expose ourselves to on a daily basis. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's good.
that is a very good question. Charity, good
Yeah,
night. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the input and the compliments. I appreciate it. I also think as well as I get these downloads as we talk. I also think as well that it would be a great show just to just again like how we're talking about one subject tonight. Talk about Evie and the effects of how people have modernization have disrupted resting places for these spirits that deserved their rest and everything. Joe, are you interested in chiming in on something like that in the future as well?
of course. Yeah.
I think it would be a great show. Evie would be great, really good. So okay, there you got it, folks. I mean, several ideas already. We got a story about his experiences versus our guest tomorrow night about Louisiana. We got another one about Judd Trail and another one with Evie. I think we're going to be busy, but happily so. And with that said, folks, thank you so much as always for being here. You help make this show too. I love your input. I love your questions, all of that stuff. You guys are great. So continue to be that way. And if you don't mind, ask your friends, tell them if they would like to check out this channel, check out these shows like this. And I would appreciate it. Like and subscribe, hit that bell. You know what that does. And I will be talking to you folks again soon. Don't forget tomorrow night, folks. We're going to be talking about Louisiana. This is a platform where we can bring everything from every part of America or other parts of the world. Next week, we're doing a show on Okinawa and a person who lived there amongst these spirits and haunted locations. And also, don't forget that I'm going to be doing Ghost Stories of Japan Part 2. Thank you for the feedback on that. It's the first time I've read stories from, just reading stories. So I'm getting into it now, but I really do love that. I know Joe has an interest in Japanese ghost stories as well. And but yeah, thank you all so much. And again, thank you to our guests. Please go to Facebook and please check out Hawaiian Hauntings. I guarantee you, it's going to be a great thing for you to do, and the resources that are there and everything else, and what this group has done as well. So again, thank you, Joe Punohu. As always, a pleasure to have you as a guest. Our conversations are always so engaging, and I love that part as well. It's never a dull moment when we get together, and then actually with all of our guests so far. So everyone, take care. Did someone say something else here? Let me see. Someone else say something. Okay, no one else said something. Okay, well, I just want to make sure I didn't overlook a question unless someone did. Kim Chi, did you ask something else? Or Jessica, what are you referencing, if you don't mind me asking? 13 Souls, thank you for being here as well. Lewis, thank you. Okay, great. All right, folks, I will talk to you again. Ghosts of Hawaii, you're home for a dose of ghosts. And also just great experiences that are shared amongst all of you and my guests. Take care, everyone. Aloha, love, peace, and light. God bless. And we'll get through this, okay? We will. Talk to you soon.